Welcome to Rising Tide Startups, where today's most exciting solopreneurs share their startup stories. They also deliver tangible strategies that they would implement personally if starting their business over today. Each episode is a startup masterclass. Make sure you take notes. Take it away, Kevin.
This is Kevin Pruitt with another episode of Rising Tide Startups, and my guest today is Ravi Patel. Ravi, thank you for joining me on Rising Tide.
Thank you for having me.
We chatted about maybe a week ago and kind of set this up, and I told him, I said, I've really been looking forward to this based on the initial chat. So tell our listeners a little bit about Ravi.
Sure. So I live here in Richmond, Virginia. Don't have any kids yet, so I've been married to my lovely wife for what will be 7 years in December. And my background is actually in IT, so this is good because it's a very interesting story about IT and coming into hospitality. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much a short bio of me. Obviously, the CEO of SINA Hospitality, which is a hotel development and management company.
Well, you told me something about it, when we talked the first time, and I want to kind of take a little deeper dive into the your business formation. So let's take us back to kind of university time, and then what did you think you were going to do when you were at uni, and then how did that major change, that pivot happen?
So I actually went to VCU for pre-dental because when I was in high school, I really wanted to be a dentist, and I felt like I had the knowledge to do that. I got to this thing called organic chemistry, and
the death of a lot of people.
basically told me that you need to change your career path very quickly. So I had always been good in computers, but back like when it was my time in college, a lot of people were in computers, and so I was a little hesitant to do that because I didn't think there was a good future in what I knew about computers. So what I ended up doing was I switched my major at VCU and went to the School of Business for a business degree with a concentration in network administration. And I actually got an internship in my sophomore year of college, and I worked for that company for about 5 years because I worked 2 years and then, well, more than 2 years. It's probably 6 years because I worked with them quite a bit after I was out of school. I actually had a contract before I even graduated college, so that was a good feeling.
Yeah, and a rarity in these days.
yeah, exactly. So I go into that. I'm a help desk manager, so I had a great team of folks and interns that I really mentored, and they were just the best. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better team. And it got to a point where I couldn't advance at that company. So then I leave that company and I go work for 2 more IT companies. And it's interesting because corporate America is what I found to be very cutthroat. You're a young guy coming out of school, you've got the skill set, and you're really good at what you can do. And companies don't recognize that because it's an optics thing. And for optics, they're like, well, you're a young guy. The person that's over you is considerably older than you. So it may not make sense for you to lead a team.
Right.
And I didn't want to work forever for somebody else, and not in that kind of capacity. I wanted to move up, and I couldn't do it. So like any young person, I was very frustrated. So I told my boss that I was leaving, and it wasn't received very well. And all of this ties together because I learned a lot by what happened in this instance. So he was like, we relocated you here. Now you're saying you're going to leave and all this stuff. And I said, yeah, because I have to do what's best for me. And I ultimately ended up leaving. So I go back home, and my dad's been in the hotel business. So he started in 97. And he was, very successful. So I went back home and I said, I want to start a hotel company. I would really prefer that you just advise me and just, I'm going to screw up. I know I'm going to screw up, but just help me along the way.
Help me minimize my screw ups.
Yeah. And he was very good, and he still is very good about telling me when I don't do something right, which I can appreciate.
Gotta love dads.
So we formed SINA Hospitality, and this is 2013. And so I get kind of thrown head first into it because I had grown up in the business just kind of looking at what they had done, but I had never really done anything on the hotel development side. It had always been operations.
Right.
So I get to go build my first hotel. And the directive was you need to own this and you need to understand front to back how this works because it's just like IT. If you don't understand, people will take advantage of you. So, okay. So I go there and I spend 15 months on a job site. And during that time, I'm also getting married or engaged. So there's a lot of like things going on. So we get done in 15 months on that job. The hotel opens, it's very successful, and Marriott calls. And now this is our first Marriott that we've ever built. So Marriott calls and says, hey, we'd like you to come to Los Angeles because you've won 2 awards. You've won an award for Best Opening Hotel of the Year, and you've also won Sales Ramp Up Award of the Year. And I remember the guy's name was Chip, and I said, Chip, are you sure you meant to call me and not somebody else?
Because I've been
goes,
in this
no.
business for about a year and a half. That's right.
He goes, no, it's you. I said, oh. So me and my dad jump on a plane. We go to LA and we get to meet all these people at Marriott that we had never met before. And people couldn't understand how, because we thought we did a bad job. In 15 months, like for us, that's not good for construction. So we go there and there's all these people that are just fascinated. They want to, understand what we did. What's the secret sauce? And there's no secret sauce. It's just being there every day, And it really jump started our presence with the brands, in particular Marriott. And now we have 12 Marriotts. And it's been a very, very successful partnership. And, I attribute that to my dad because I think if I had done it myself and he hadn't been there, I don't think I would be where I am right now.
Well, you certainly have to put into practice. I mean, advice is nothing but information until it's applied. So,
right.
You had to go and be there every day, and with the due diligence and staying on the contractors and subcontractors and making sure things were done on a timeline and making sure all the pieces were fitting together. Because, I mean, you were not necessarily the general contractor of the build, but you were the general contractor of the project.
Right.
You were certainly the project manager of that. So.
Right.
Tell me, like, let's walk through those first 15 months that, because you were fairly young when you did this, right? So
I was in my early 20s.
So that's just extraordinary.
I mean, out partying.
Some early 20s that are like sleeping on the couch till noon, going, getting up at the crack of noon.
Yeah, I never got that luxury. I know people that do, but it wasn't me.
I'm just curious, like day to day. I mean, you said I was there. I mean, were you virtually almost living on site?
So the project was 20 minutes from my house. So I drove every day, and I put a lot of. You'd be surprised. You put a lot of miles on your car going in town. So I probably put 13,000 miles on my car in that time, which is crazy, right? So
just going back and forth to the job.
Yeah, but no. So I was paired up with a very experienced superintendent that had done work for my family in Louisville, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
And, Tom is a great guy. And so the way that Tom works is he goes, if I tell you to be here at 6 a.m., you need to be here at 6 a.m. because that's when the job starts. Now, if you want to leave at 3 p.m., I have no problem with that. And his work ethic was really good. He was always walking the job. He never sat down in the construction trailer. He was always just on top of people. And I learned more from that experience than anything else because I learned that you have to know everything front to back. There are going to be challenges on the construction site. And in order to accommodate for them, you need to understand what's going on so that you can produce an answer fairly quickly. Because this is, if you delay the job for 2 days, you're losing 2 weeks essentially. And you can't do that on this type of project.
It's very expensive to kind of push that date out.
Yeah. Well, and the construction interest doesn't help. All of that is very pricey.
Exactly.
But yeah, it was a little intimidating because I'm in IT and I know IT and I own that, for at least I think I did. But so going into construction, it's like I don't know anything about this. Like you want me to be out here every day no problem. I can do that. I mean, it's my hotel. I probably should be, but
Yeah. And you may have wanted to be there. I mean, if
yeah,
I was if that was my job, if I had a, that project was my life at that time, I would have been there every day,
yeah. And these
for sure.
subcontractors, you really gain the respect of them because I've never been one to be like, well, this is what you do and this is what I do. I mean, I was hauling building materials in and out of there. I was loading to pick up with stuff. I was, eating lunch in the truck just like everybody else, and it's just they gained the respect because they're like, oh, so you're actually a working owner. You're not just like a owner.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
made a big difference,
Yeah. Yeah. There's no doubt about it. And another thing that the fact that you were there among them, type thing, that it probably caused them to have a little different perspective about, their work ethic and what they were there to do as well. I mean, not only the contractor walking around, but you were there as well.
Yeah.
And you could very easily go back to the contractor and say, oh, by the way, the plumber you hired, he's sleeping, half the day back there.
A lot of those subs that we used, I still use them today. I mean, they've literally watched me kind of do what I do, and it's just been an amazing experience. I mean, on my first job, I actually there's like a hole in my shoe. That's how much I walked. I had a hole in the bottom of the sole of my shoe. I had to throw them away. I'd walked so much that year.
You need to save it. You need to frame those shoes. Just, it's kind of like people frame their first dollar, they ever made. You said, these are the shoes that I walked a hole in the job site as we were building construction.
My wife killed me. That was a birthday present, and I was not supposed to be wearing those shoes out there, and I got a lot of heat for that. So marriage is all about compromise.
Absolutely. He said, but honey, one day this is going to pay off. Trust me. This is, that nice vacation I keep telling you about 5 years from now. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. So you get the hotel launched. I mean, the project itself is so much bigger than just the construction. I mean, you've got to work on vendors and staffing and setting up corporations and all the back end stuff. So, your early 20s and you're sitting there going, I can't imagine the headache, because, a hotel is not like building a house. I mean, that's a major project. It's a major construction project.
And it's also, even just, I guess, to go back to the basics is, you have to identify the piece of land, and then you have to go and get the franchise. Well, when you're a relatively new person, it's incredibly difficult to get a franchise to call you back. And even though my dad had been in the business, we didn't have a relationship with Marriott, and really didn't have a good relationship with Hilton either, because we just had never built those products.
Right. So
it took a lot of preparation. I probably spent 2 months working on the packet to give to Marriott because it had to have everything in there. So the way that I was taught is that if you're going to give a franchise or anything, it needs to be solid front to back, and there needs to be no question about why you want to put this hotel here. Because if there's a question, you're just opening up a chance for them to say no. But if you give them all the facts and information, there's really no reason why they should tell you no, unless there's something greater going on that you don't know about.
Right.
And that method worked well, because when we met with Marriott, they literally took the binder that I had and they put it to the side and said, we don't need this. And it's a little deflating, right? You spend 2 months doing that. And they're like, we don't need it. I said, okay, why? And they said, because we already know the hotel is going to work. All of this is just confirming what we already know. So
had they done market research for the area you were looking at, or did you?
They had.
Did you? Oh, you could. So that was part of the negotiation with the hotel, I guess, chain, is to say, okay, we're looking at this area, or did they say, here are the locations that we would consider as viable, and you can get to pick one of those?
Yeah, basically when you do hotel development, you've got to go and find a market and identify it and sell it to them. And I thought that that's what this was when we first started. And what I came to find out on that first deal is that is not, they had already done the research. They were just looking for somebody to confirm what they believed to be correct. And so it was kind of like a meeting of the minds where they said, yes, we do have information that confirms what you think. Let's go ahead and do it.
And this hotel was
on you.
For sure. Yeah. There's other than their brand name and the reputation around it. Yeah. The risk is all yours. So, Where was this hotel located?
Midlothian, Virginia. It's the Fairfield Inn and Suites on Midlothian, right there by the Arboretum.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. And that's part of the Marriott chain.
Hmm.
Okay. So you remember the day one when you walked in and unlocked the door that morning and said, okay, we're open for business.
I remember having a big sigh of relief. I'm like, man, we're finally done. Like this was just, it had been a bumpy. I mean, we had gone through 2 snowstorms. There was a like a torrential downpour for like the whole month of May. I mean, I didn't get my parking lot done until a week before we opened.
Yeah,
Like
I
it
remember
was,
you saying that we talked last week about
Yeah.
that was the like the last major concern you had.
Yeah.
And when that somehow played into the fact that, people were asking you, how did you get that done?
Right.
How did you accomplish that feat?
Yeah, and then that's the thing, when it rains that much, I mean, this property is on a slope, so it's already challenging enough because it's not a flat site. And then the combination of rain, I mean, I probably could have sold ATV tickets to do like off-road mudding or whatever for a month and probably made some money. I mean, my truck got stuck there quite often because I didn't have four-wheel drive back then.
Here is
But
the typical entrepreneur. He's always looking at the opportunity. That's right.
yeah, and so we get the parking lot done because we finally get like 7 days of just dry weather. And I told the guys to just put the parking lot down, man. We got to get it done. So that's the lesson that I learned now, to always do that before we do anything else.
Yeah, that's right.
But
we don't want to rely on the weather to be able to deliver because it's always unpredictable. But
it's just a big sigh of relief. I mean, to be able to visualize it, build it, see it done, it's good. It's something to be proud of. I think a lot of people in my business in particular kind of take it for granted, like, oh, it's just another hotel that we're just sticking up here. But when you actually put your hands in it and you're in there every day, that's something to be proud of.
A lot of work. That's a lot of work that the average person would have no idea. They just think Marriott just goes around the country and just decides where they want places. And they say, okay, we're going to put one here. Let's go find somebody to own it and run it or to be a franchisee. So, I love the story. And so how does the system itself work? So you have kind of a target launch date. Let's say it's January 1, 2015 is your launch date. Mm-hmm. So is the Marriott site taking bookings before that, or do you have a site that's open that says, we have availability from this date on? I mean, I would imagine there's kind of a ramp up period when a hotel first opens, that occupancy kind of grows over time, or how does that work?
Yeah, so when you traditionally, and it's the same with all franchises, they do something called pre-selling. And I did that on my first hotel. And what I found out very quickly is that I should not have done that because I didn't open on time, or what I would have had expected to open on time.
Right.
So you have to relocate all of these angry people, and they're angry, rightfully so, because they don't have a place to sleep. And then you incur all the charges for relocating them. Typically, it's 3 to 4 months before you're projected to open is when they'll put it on Marriott.com. And, people, especially in this day and age, everything is online. So they're looking, and sports tourism is such a huge part of Richmond in general. And if you don't time it right and you open that system up and you're not ready, you're going to pay for it because there's nowhere for these people to go.
Yep.
And that's exactly what happened to me like 3 times on that first hotel. And I learned I probably shouldn't do that anymore. So we have another hotel going up here in Richmond, and I wanted to open the pre-selling for July 1st because we're supposed to open in April. And my wife reminded me of that time and said, remember that time when you did that and it didn't work? Let's not do that again. So I took her advice. But.
Thanks, honey, for stating the obvious. It's always the travel site. Thanks, Captain Obvious. I appreciate that. Yeah, and I mean, we're the Captain Obvious, not our wives, for sure.
That's right.
So we're the ones that always point out the obvious. But so how was the experience as a early 20s hotel owner in Richmond, Virginia? I mean, walk us kind of through the highs and lows of early entrepreneurship.
there's a lot of people that look at you a little differently because they're trying to figure out, did you do it? Did your dad just kind of help you out and then you're just taking the credit? But one thing that I was taught early on is, keep your head down, you know, keep a low profile and just do what you do. And if you do that, people will come out and figure out who you are. And there's no marketing in the world that is going to help you. It's just they're going to know. And so I did that for like 7 years. And it's interesting because now I'm starting to do more podcasts and radio shows and things that I wouldn't have done before. But because I've put the work in, I'm in a different spot. But, being a hotel owner in your 20s and 30s, it's good. So I'll give you a little story of how Marriott kind of rewarded me in that regard, I would say. So Marriott has something called a franchise advisory council. Now, for example, the Fairfield brand itself has about 1,100 hotels in its system right now. There's 11 franchisees that sit on this council with 3 or 4 people from Marriott. And if you are elected to this council, your job is to help shape the brand. Like, whatever things Marriott is thinking, you're there to say, I think this is a good idea, or I don't think this is a good idea, and this is why. And so it's a pretty high profile place to be. So I got the call. I was 29. It was just before I turned 30, and I got the call. And they said, we want you to be on this board. And I said, okay. And
once again, he said, is it, you got the right guy?
Yeah. Well, I remember walking into the room, and there were there's some great companies on that board, and they're all like quadruple the size that we are. And just to be able to sit there and take it in, it was good. It was very intimidating because, like I said, these are, seasoned people. I mean, you're talking about like at least 10, 15 years above where I am, and it's been a really good experience. And I think that's really kind of the ultimate testament to kind of who we are and how we think outside the box, how we're different. But yeah, it's always, there's a lot of people that ask me this question, and I always tell them, I really don't, like, it's nice and all, but I just don't really think about it like that. For me, it's more, I have a successful business that I've run, I've built, I've had great people to help me along the way to advise me. And I think this is really, the corporate America, learning from those experiences and then doing what I want to do. That's really been great, and so when COVID happened, right, like the worst thing that could have ever happened to this world happened.
Right.
And so the bottom drops out in March and April. There are a lot of companies that start to say, hey, we are not going to keep our staff during this time. Being a little bit younger, I didn't think COVID was going to last more than 6 months. I really, people kept saying it was going to last. No, it's not here. Like, we're not seeing it. It's not here. And we go through some of our reserve money to put people, keep them on payroll, because I don't want to let anybody go. It's too early to make that decision. What ends up happening is we start getting calls from management companies that we work with, because most of our properties are now third-party managed. The management companies are saying, we need to make a decision to keep the hotel profitable. What do you want to do? Our suggestion is start cutting staff. We don't know how bad it's going to be, and we're going to hire them again later. Being in corporate America for a long time really resonated with me on this one, because I said, I don't believe that is the right thing to do. In terms of business, yes, it is the right thing to do. But in terms of like the people that you've brought in and their families and how it's affected, because when you break it down, you're going to save about $6,000 a month on payroll by doing this. What is the point? And if you can explain that to me, okay, let's talk about it. And they're like, well, we can make the hotel a little bit more profitable. And I said, okay, again, but what if the owner is telling you that it's not a concern, then why are you concerned about it? And so what we end up doing is we keep all of our staff through COVID, everybody. There are people that elected to leave because of federal funding,
Sure.
and that's fine, you
Sure.
know. But for the most
But
part,
that was their choice.
yeah. And
Right.
we took loans. We took SBA loans and you know, EIDL. I mean, you know, but it was used for payroll.
Mm-hmm.
And that concept, for whatever reason, I said it on a radio show, and I didn't even mean for it to blow up into what it has been, but I just said it. And I remember the guy, he turned to me and he said, "Are you telling me that you really didn't let anybody go during COVID?" And I said, "Yes." Why is that, you know, why is that a big deal? And what I've come to find out is that that philosophy is not shared with a lot of people in our industry. Now, whether that's because they had older hotels, I had newer hotels, my cost basis was lower, I don't know, but it just wasn't a common thing. What's happened during COVID is that we've been able to actually build our staff and get people from competitors that were very angry that their competitors let them go.
Mm.
And
Yep.
it's really been an eye-opening thing. There's a lot of people that kind of look at us differently now. I mean, when you walk in a room and you sit down, you kind of don't have to say anything anymore because they know exactly who you are and what you did.
Right. Right.
You know,
and
that,
if they're working for your competitors and
yeah,
the competitors did, I mean, if they have a choice to make, where do you think they're going to go? And
right.
you
And
get
that's
to
what a
hire
lot of
the
people
best
did.
people.
Yep. And that's what we did. We got some of the best people that we could, especially in the Richmond and Louisville, Kentucky markets. And it has been really a good story to tell people. And I only tell people that to say that, you know, the lessons that I learned in corporate America are really, that's probably the only reason why I would have done it. Because if I hadn't gone to work in that environment and seen how it was, I would be like everybody else and say, yeah, cut them.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but sitting on the other side of the table,
Right.
now I understand that that is not the right thing to do.
I mean, I love that, the whole idea. I mean, as I think back of like bosses that I've worked under, you know, in my life, I have probably learned as a manager, I've learned what not to do as much as I've learned what to do, you know, from managers. And I mean, there's always that two-sided coin that you have to look at, and based on your own life experiences and, you know, how you were treated or how the experiences you had, how you want to kind of, you know, let that influence how you lead people in the future. So if you were going back to your early 20s, what are some things that you know now that you wish you would have known then, that you said, man, if I'd have known this, it would have saved me a lot of headaches?
I think if I would have known how lucrative the hotel business was, I probably would have never gone in IT. I think I would have just started, because if I had come out of college and I had like a head start, I think it probably would have helped me a lot. That's not to say that things haven't been good and we haven't accomplished a lot, but I think it would have been interesting to come out of college and just head first go into that, because it would put us in probably a very different situation today in a very good way.
But would you have, what about your management style? I mean, was that kind of developed through your IT experience a little bit, like, you know,
I would
leading
say
teams
so.
and stuff?
I would say so. You, as a manager, you learn to exercise a lot of patience.
Yeah, for sure.
Because there's a lot of people that, you know, don't do their job correctly. And so you
Yeah.
have to kind of, you know, do you ride them really hard and say, hey, you know, I need you to do your job right, or do you work with them? And you know, my style is a little different. Everything with me is a conversation. So, you know, I encourage my staff, and I think part of this was because of IT, but if there's a problem, we are not going to arrive at a solution because I'm going to tell you a solution. The solution is going to be formed because we're all talking about it together and we're all collaborating. When people collaborate together as a company, whether you're the owner or the employee or both, that goes a long way.
For
And
sure.
people work a little harder because they know that their voice is heard.
Right. And they have a little ownership, you know,
Right.
in the decision. And I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, you know, the buck stops with you, you know,
Right.
when the ultimate decision has to be made, you have to make it, but they understand that because they've had an opportunity to speak into that up to, they may not agree with it ultimately, and oftentimes they won't, but at least they, like you said, they will believe that they've been heard, in that process. So,
Yeah.
and where are your properties located, and how wide is your footprint in the States?
So the footprint right now is 5 states. We're Virginia, West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Missouri. That footprint is most likely going to grow over time, but it's going to be organic growth, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we're still a family-owned business. We don't have investors, and so one of the most important things for me is making sure that I don't overbuild or I don't push myself to do things that I'm not comfortable with.
Yeah.
Uh, so I think you'll probably see us in a few more states, but I don't think we're ever going to get to like over 10 states. I just
Mm-hmm.
don't see it.
And how many hotels are in those 5 states?
26.
26. And what brands are there?
So we have Marriott, Hilton, Intercontinental hotels. Those are the three main. And then we have a Best Western and then a Carlson hotel.
Now, is there a reason that you have kind of diversified in like 5 different brands versus, say, we're going to build all of them as Marriotts or all of them as Fairfields or all of them as Intercontinentals or whatever? What's the thought process?
I think any franchise rep, and they'll probably watch this, they'll tell you that, Ravi should only develop with us. And they have they have a compelling argument.
Yeah, vested
sometimes.
interest too. That's right.
But it really depends on flag availability. So like when you go to an interchange, maybe you see, let's say you see like a Holiday Inn or a Hampton Inn or a Fairfield. You can't build another one next to it or within a certain mile radius. And so it forces you to look outside and you basically have to shop all of the brands and say, okay, who's got what?
Right.
And then you really have to dial into the market and make a determination of which one do you think will perform the best based on what you're given. And I mean, hotel brands now, there's some people that have like 20 to 30 different brands, and it's very difficult to try to determine which one is the best bet. So you really have to spend a lot of time thinking about who is your target consumer, what are the demand generators in the area, what are the traffic counts, where are these people coming from, and what rate am I going to get? Let me look at the market. Is the market getting just under $100? Are they getting $150? Well, which flag fits in that category? And you can eliminate a lot of flags that way. So it's kind of like Guess Who that the kids
Right.
play, and then once you start pushing stuff down, then you figure out, okay, this is the one that makes sense. But that's kind of how that process works.
Well, I think there's it's like investing. I think there may be some strength in diversification too. I mean, if for some reason one chain is falling on hard times or they make some bad marketing decisions or whatever it is that might have a knock-on effect to your hotel, you at least have a much broader footprint to kind of weather that storm a little bit. So
Right.
or get some bad PR,
Yeah.
for sure. Well, man, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat today and just walking us through the process. And I've actually learned a great deal about the hotel business just this morning. But is there anything you want to leave us with that we haven't asked you about? And then maybe just tell people where's the best place to find any information about SINA online.
Yeah. So, what I would tell people that are listening or watching this is that there are, this country, there's a lot of opportunity to really be successful as a business person. And a lot of people always say that, if I only had this or if I only had that. And what I would leave you with is that there are programs out there. Research them. Don't be afraid to lean on people for advice. But if you really want to be an entrepreneur, you can. You need to just put your head down, put in the hard work, and just know that at some point it will pay off. It's going to be painful. I mean, there's going to be days where you're like, hey, was this the right thing to do? I've had and have those days all the time. But that's really the secret sauce is just put your head down and do the work. In terms of finding us, we leverage LinkedIn quite a bit. So we're at SINA Hospitality on LinkedIn, or you can go to our website. So www.sinahospitality.com.
That's SINA hospitality.com. Yep. And then we'll have that in the show notes for sure. And Ravi, just thank you for taking the time today in your very busy schedule to just chat with us, and really just for playing your part in helping all boats rise in a rising tide. Ravi,
Sure.
have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Another episode in the books. We hope you heard some great takeaways. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a 5-star review on iTunes and YouTube. As always, thanks for listening to Rising Tide.